Members of Congress have been weighing in on the historic significance of the unsettling events in Russia over the last 48 hours. One perspective that really struck out to me was from Democratic Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. Before being elected to serve in Congress, she was a CIA analyst, and she held a number of defense and intelligence positions under Presidents Bush and Obama. She also served as the acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, where she oversaw policy on Russia. She's got a lot of experience on these issues. The Congresswoman tweeted that she was up most of Friday night watching everything unfold, saying that it is, quote, the clearest public confirmation of the folly of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin of Michigan joins me now. So I wanted to start there. In your tweet on Friday, you called out the folly of Putin's invasion. Do you think he would be facing challenges to his leadership if he had not invaded Ukraine?
No, I mean, I think that's the point, right? Is that a year ago or a year and a half ago, he launched a full-scale invasion of another nation, thinking, number one, that his military had the capability to do it. Number two, that the international community and the United States specifically wouldn't rally, get organized, stay coherent, stay unified, and he could wait us out. And he would have taken back this country in his mind and put him in the annals of Russian history, right, as a great leader. And a year and a half later, he's defending himself. He's defending his leadership. He's having to make statements from bunker locations to his population. He's having other heads of state negotiate deals with the guy who's threatening violence against him. I mean, it doesn't feel like a strong position for him to be in. And so I think it just shows the real strategic mistake he has made in trying to invade Ukraine. And I hope that the Ukrainians are able to take advantage of it on the battlefield.
Given your extensive background in national security, I wanted to ask you about these reports, which NBC News has now confirmed that U.S. intelligence officials were aware that Prigozhin was preparing to take this military action against Russia. They even briefed congressional leaders about it last week. They kept it quiet publicly because they were worried, reportedly, that Putin would accuse them of staging a coup, which, of course, we've shown his capabilities in that regard in the past. But what did you make of that decision for them not to provide that information publicly?
Look, this isn't the United States' fight, right? This is the first time we've had violence and conflict on Russian soil between Russians since the coup in attempted coup in the 90s. So this is not for us to foment, to exaggerate, to try and fan the flames. We're watching. Now, we have a huge interest, as does the rest of the world, because Russia is a nuclear superpower, right? They have the ability to, if they became unstable, to be a really dangerous concern for the whole international community. But this is a fight between Russians, obviously. And it's not like this was done in complete darkness. Prigozhin was talking about his complaints against Putin and the regime for a while. I mean, he was given a pretty long leash. And so this was, something that was being played out in the open, not just behind closed doors.
Now, as you and I both know, even though it seems a little bit calm on the ground now, there are a lot of conversations happening in the Situation Room, in the Pentagon, among your former colleagues. What's happening right now? What are they watching? What are you watching over the next couple of days here in Russia and on the ground there? And in Ukraine, too, I should say. Very important.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, the preeminent concern has to be that this country that has nuclear weapons is still stable. And, if you've worked on the, sort of U.S.-Russia relations, there are basically three really important people in that architecture. There's Putin, there's the Minister of Defense, and the Chief of the Defense Staff. And you've had people on your program today talking about, well, what's going to happen to the Minister of Defense or the Chief of Defense Staff? Are they going to be fired? Are they going to be let go? So I thought it was important that people like Chairman Milley canceled his trip, that they're in the Situation Room, they're having this conversation behind closed doors, because that's the biggest threat that we have to be worried about, even if it's a low likelihood that something will happen. And then, in my mind, it's making sure that the Ukrainians can potentially take advantage of some of these weaknesses on the battlefield. What does it mean that the Wagner Group is a little on its heels right now? What does it mean that they were on the front lines and now maybe their morale is going to be low? Maybe they're going somewhere else. So I think in my mind, those conversations are first and foremost about the nuclear threat. and then number two, about how to take advantage of this moment in Ukraine.
In light of that, I mean, in terms of how to take advantage of it, which is no doubt the conversation that's being had in capitals around the world, in Europe and here, do you think that anything should change about the U.S. posture in Ukraine in terms of the type of aid or assistance the U.S. provides, or do you anticipate that changing those conversations, say, at the NATO meeting that's coming up in a few weeks?
Well, look, I mean, I've always been an advocate for doing to the limit of what we can do without sending American sons and daughters into that war, because I think it's important to punch Putin in the mouth a few more times, change the status quo on the ground so that the Ukrainians have a position of strength and feel comfortable coming to a negotiating table. Right? That's what we're trying to get to. And I think there's a lot of hope that this summer offensive would be that game changer on the ground. So I've been supportive of not just the volume that we've been sending over there, but different types of weapons to help give them an advantage on the battlefield. I was a supporter of sending F-16s or training their pilots. It's because you got to change the status quo in order to move us to a different point in this war. So I hope that, I mean, look, what happened in the last 48 hours or 72 hours is the greatest indicator we have that Putin has made a strategic mistake. Let's press with the Ukrainians now and try to put some points on the board to change the status quo and hopefully see our way through this conflict and not just have it be like another decade-long frozen conflict.
Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.